Hi, I'm Annalee, and this is my YouTube knitting journal. My name is Annalee, and I live in Seattle, Washington. I have 3 large dogs, 2 teenage children, and 1 handsome Latino husband. I also have a ton of yarn and a huge passion for knitting, and I've been enjoying making these videos just to talk about what I'm doing, document what I'm doing, and share some of the enthusiasm that I have for this hobby. It's been a little over 2 weeks since I made my last video. The last video was recorded in Jamaica. I was on vacation. We have since come back from vacation and back to quote-unquote normal life. But let me tell you, friggin' life always has curveballs for you. So we're kind of dealing with another curveball as of late, but I have made it through 100% of the difficult times so far. I think that's a pretty good record, and I think I can continue my streak of making it through the tricky stuff that life tries to throw at me. I have one and only finished object to share today. It's something I actually started since the last time I recorded a video, and I then finished it, and I haven't finished any other projects. They're all just still works in progress, and I'm going to talk about them another time. So just real quickly, the one finished object, I made another one of these beanies that I've been making a few of lately. So it's got a folded over brim, and I am not using a pattern. I have a fair amount of knitting experience under my belt at this point, so for something like a hat, I typically won't buy a pattern. Actually, part of what I like is working out the details and figuring things out myself. But I understand that there's a popular pattern by Petite Knit called the Oslo hat, or it might be the Oslo beanie, that looks like it's probably pretty similar to this, but I don't own that pattern, so I don't know the details of it. But I like this because it's got kind of a triple folded brim to keep the ears warm. The yarn is called Extra from Blue Sky Fibers, and it's a blend of wool, merino wool, and alpaca. And it makes for a nice cushy hat. It's an Aran weight, so the skein came with 150 grams, and that was just around 220 yards. So definitely a little bit thicker than a Cascade 220, but I knit it up on a US 5 needle so that it has a nice tight gauge, which again will contribute to being warm and windproof. Now this project I am going to be putting in the mail later this week and sending it to my brother Noah. He is my favorite brother. He's also my only brother, but he's my favorite brother, and he is just always awesome and supportive, and one of the first people that I call whenever I have either good news or bad news to share. We weren't especially close growing up, but as adults, we realized that we have a lot in common and that we can be each other's biggest support. So I appreciate you, Noah. I appreciate all you do for me, and this will be heading your way very soon. Okay, so I mentioned I'm not going to share any of my works in progress today. None of them are at a point where there's something interesting to talk about, really. You may notice that instead of having a little table next to me, I have an empty chair. And that's because today I thought it would be fun to tell you about and show you some of the things that I have knit for my teenage son. So he has agreed to come and be in one of his Silly Moms videos. So Dean, come on over. So this is Dean.
Hi.
And good grief, child, you are so tall. I understand your chair is like a little bit taller than me, but also my child is quite a bit taller than me. Why don't we switch seats? Oh, that's better. Now I feel like the mother, like the grown-up. So, Dean, show them the logo on your shirt. Dean happens to be wearing a shirt right now that is a school uniform for a school in Thailand. And that is because last year Dean spent a few weeks in Thailand on a cultural exchange program. So how do you say hello in Thailand, Dean?
We say, สวัสดีครับ
Do you know how to say knitting in Thai?
My ruleo. I don't know yet.
Okay. I don't expect knitting is very popular in Thailand. They don't have much cold weather there or need for wool.
Maybe in the north.
Maybe in the north. Okay, well, you're going to have to ask one of your friends how to say knitting in Thai.
I guess so.
This coming summer, Dean is actually going to go out of the country again. He is going to be in Tajikistan learning Persian. It's part of a program through the Department of State. They have a program, what's it called? The National Security Language Initiative?
For youth.
For youth. So he's going to be going and learning Persian. Dean is also pretty much fluent in Spanish. He speaks Spanish to my husband and my husband's family. He's taking a university French class. So he is my polyglot son, and I'm quite proud of him. All right. So Dean, let's show them some of the things I have made for you. And Dean legit wears the things that I made. He wears them proudly, and I think that he actually is not ashamed to tell people that his mother made things.
Yep, I'm always like, hey look, my mom made it.
Which is so funny because when I was growing up, my mom made the majority of my clothes. I think until high school, probably my mom made the majority of my clothes. She would sew. And mostly she did that because it was, I mean, in those days, it was more economical to sew your own clothing than to buy it. Things have changed quite a bit. It's far more expensive, I think, now to make your own clothes. But I have memories of one Easter Sunday wearing this Easter dress that my mom had sewn for me, and someone at church saying, "Oh, I recognize that fabric. Those are my sheets." Because my mom had bought some inexpensive sheets to use as fabric. And I was usually embarrassed about telling people my mom made clothes. I would tell them if somebody asked me where I got something, I would say I got it in Yuba City, because there was a fabric store in Yuba City that my mom used to go to. But it's different now.
That was before upcycling was popular on TikTok.
Well, okay, maybe there's one good thing about TikTok then, that it made upcycling, and not just upcycling, but handmade. I mean, having something handmade nowadays is
really special.
It's a good thing. It's something to be proud of. Maybe it was back when I was a kid too, and I just wasn't as, I don't know, kind to my mother as you are to yours. Sweet child. Okay, so I think this is one of the first things that I made for him. It is just a long infinity scarf. I didn't have a pattern. I just used brioche and garter stitches and just kind of made a checkerboard. You can put it on. Now, I think the reason that I made this is I decided I wanted to try yarn dyeing. I don't know a whole lot about it, but it just sounded fun, and so I made my children do it with me. I've also made my mom do it with me, and a couple of friends, whenever they come to visit, I make them dye yarn with me. So I made Dean dye some yarn with me, and we had some sock blanks, which what a sock blank is that it's undyed yarn, and it's already knit into just like a long rectangle, and it was just knit by machine into a long rectangle holding 2 strands of yarn at the same time. And then you can dye it, and if you want, you can dye it like as a gradient or, you know, some unique striping pattern. And then what you do is after you've dyed it, you unravel that rectangle. And what you end up with when you unravel it is 2 balls of yarn that have the exact same color sequence. So we dyed this or Dean dyed it as a sock blank, but decided he didn't want socks. He just wanted to like put different shades of red together. And then when I knit it up, I can't remember whether I held 2 strands together or I might have chain plied, which would give me 3 strands together. Looks like there's 3 strands. So I guess I chain plied it. Dean's looking at me like he doesn't know what that is. Chain plying is you more or less, with the yarn that you're working with, you make like a big crochet chain and you knit that, and then you make another big crochet chain. I don't know if I'm explaining it really well, but Google is your friend if you want to know more. And so yeah, it showed him how it has a few different shades of yarn, a few different shades of red. And yeah, Dean wears this quite a bit, right, buddy?
Yeah, pretty often, especially in the cold winter months.
Okay, so this is another thing that I made for Dean. Guess what? It's also just an infinity scarf. And it's also yarn that Dean dyed because I wanted to dye yarn one day, and I made him dye yarn with me. So this was not a sock blank. This was just...
Are you sure?
Yeah, because I remember you did it in the pan.
Oh, I guess it was pan dyed.
Yeah, so, what do they call that? Low immersion dyeing? Kettle dyeing, maybe?
Kettle dyeing.
Not a dyeing expert here, but yeah, so this one is just all seed stitch. And I just love the way seed stitch works up. I think it's just such a great texture. One of these days I should make myself a sweater. I have a scarf quite similar to this, actually, that's all seed stitch. So I don't even know, this might have been a DK weight yarn. It looks like I held it single. I didn't, I guess, keep extremely good records, although it might be in my Ravelry page. So yeah, he wears this one quite a bit.
Yeah, I also wear this one pretty often.
Yeah.
I like the texture and the color a lot.
Good thing you like the color. You're the one that chose it.
Yep.
Okay, so now on to something kind of fun. This is a gorgeous sweater. The pattern is called Painting Bricks, and it's a pattern by Stephen West. So let me tell you a little bit the story of this sweater. Stephen West is an extremely popular knitwear designer. He does a lot with bright colors and unique patterns. Every year he runs a mystery knit along that thousands of people participate in. I'm not, I would say, a huge Stephen West fan. I appreciate his talent, but it's never really been my cup of tea. But when I saw this pattern get released, I thought, wow, I never thought I would make a Stephen West pattern, but I need to make that. That is such a cool pattern. And the pattern is written for a DK weight yarn, but I bought a set. It's a set of yarn with, you know, all these different colors, and then this kind of bluish slate gray as a background color. The yarn is from Miss Babs. It's called Yummy 2-ply, and I bought it as a set. I thought it would work really well in this, but it's a fingering weight, so I did have to adapt the pattern a little bit, and I made some notes in my Ravelry page about just what I did to adapt it. But I started this pattern thinking I was making a sweater for myself, and Dean not so subtly hinted to me that he thought it was very cool and would love to have a sweater exactly like this. So I finished it. I wore it to work once because I wanted to wear it at least once. I took a picture of myself in it, and then I gave it to Dean. So I am pretty proud of this sweater. It was a lot of work, especially at a fingering weight gauge, because you're changing colors quite a bit. Although it's a slip stitch design, so you don't ever have to carry more than one color on the same round. You just slip stitches here and there, and I think it's so handsome. And Dean, you say that people make comments about it every time you wear it.
Yeah, I get compliments on it every single time.
Yeah, I mean, the colors look great on you. I mean, I guess we're just lucky that we wear the same size sweater.
For now.
Who do you think is going to get a larger size sweater sooner?
We'll have to wait and see.
Have to wait and see. Are you hoping it's you? Dean's been working out quite a bit. I think you're trying to put on some more muscle, huh?
Yep. Wear bigger sweaters than my mom.
Bigger sweaters than your mom. Okay, so if and when the day comes that this sweater no longer fits you because, you know, you flex and the sleeves rip off, are you going to give it back to me?
Oh, I think it'll have to go to Grandma.
So as I was kind of like steaming these sweaters, and I noticed, in order to have them look, you know, somewhat decent for him to show off on YouTube. Actually, I can't even find it now. Oh, there it is. Yeah, one of this sweater has a little hole in it. So Dean tells me there was an incident involving Christmas lights that caused a snag. Is that right?
Yes.
Now, fortunately, I do have some scraps of the gray yarn left over from... How long ago did I make this for you? Maybe 2-3 years?
Gotta be 2-3 years, yeah.
Yeah, but I still have some of the gray yarn, so I'll be able to repair that. So you leave that sweater with me today, and I will fix that little hole.
Thank you, Mom.
Okay, now this is the fourth and final knit item for my teenage son that I want to share. And this one was finished quite recently. This is a design called Rein, as in reindeer, by Arne and Carlos. So Arne and Carlos, I mentioned them in my last video also because I've actually started another sweater for Dean. That's another Arne and Carlos design. I love them. I love everything they do. They're hilarious to me, and watching their videos is just charming and calming. One of these days I hope to go on a knitting cruise with them. I know that they're on a knitting cruise right now because I've been seeing the Instagram posts, and when they announced this round of knitting cruises, I thought very seriously about trying to go, but the timing wouldn't have worked out. Arnie and Carlos are designers. They design a lot of patterns for Rein, which is a yarn company. They don't actually write up the patterns though. They design them and then they pass them off to Rein, and Rein has a team of pattern writers that actually write the patterns. I would say that this is the most difficult, complicated knitting project I've ever made. So it uses intarsia, and it gets quite complicated because with intarsia you have to have a separate ball of yarn for each color across a row. So as you're working this row, you have like a ball of white, say, and then you switch and you use a ball of black, and then another ball of white for a few stitches, and another ball of black, and a third ball of white, and a third ball of black, and so on and so on. And you have to knit it flat. There are so-called intarsia in the round techniques, but they really they're just ways of knitting flat while you're still connecting into a round. This was my first intarsia project though, and boy, I picked a doozy as my first ever intarsia project. I think I had as many as, what did I say, 13, 15 balls of yarn?
Something like that. Hanging
off at the same time. I love knitting, and I always thought that I didn't mind difficult or finicky techniques because that's part of the joy for me, until I made this sweater. This sweater had me questioning whether it was worth it to do intarsia with 15 different balls of yarn hanging across the back. As I was making it, I kind of swore that I would not do something like this again. But now, seeing the result, I don't know. I mean, it's pretty striking. Now, there are quite a few imperfections in it that as I was making it, I couldn't not focus on. You know, like there's just little places like where the tension of some of the stitches is just not perfect. There were a couple of places where I altered the chart ever so slightly, just to make the yarn management easier. And as I was knitting it, I just thought, oh, look at all those imperfections. It doesn't look great. But, I mean, now, from a distance, you know, even from somewhat up close, I think it looks pretty darn good. So why don't you try that on?
Yeah, this one's definitely my favorite sweater. I think I've worn it every single week.
Have you since I finished it? You've worn it at least once a week.
And this is the one that I get the most compliments on. I always have to show it off, and even when I'm not getting compliments, I'm like, look what my mom made for me. Aww. It's my favorite sweater. It really is my favorite sweater.
Thank you, Dean. One thing about this, it is, I mentioned it's knit flat. So it's knit flat in pieces and seamed. I know that there are people out there that don't like seaming sweaters. They prefer to knit in the round, but I think I don't have a problem with knitting flat. And I don't have a problem with seaming. So, yeah, it's very, very handsome. So, yeah, why don't you show them the inside real quick. There are 1,000 ends that I had to weave in. A whole bunch of ends from all those different balls of yarn for the intarsia. If I were to do this project again, I would use a different yarn. Oh, I didn't mention the yarn. So the yarn for this, I actually went to the yarn store and asked if they had the yarn that the pattern called for, which, because it's a Rein pattern, is a Rein yarn. It's a Rein, it calls for a Rein yarn that's, I think it's either 100% alpaca or maybe it's an alpaca blend. And they didn't carry that yarn at the local shop I went to. So they recommended that I use this yarn instead. This is Cascade 220 Merino Superwash. And I quite like Cascade 220, but this is the first time I've used Cascade 20 Merino Superwash, and it's an okay yarn. It's soft, but it's kind of pilly, which I guess is to be expected. It's merino, so it's going to be a softer, less hardy wool. But just the fact that it's superwash means it's a little bit harder to get those ends to really stay put when you weave in the ends. With a non-superwash, they would have felted in place a little bit better, or, you know, kind of held in place a little bit more easily. It wouldn't have been quite as much of a pain. So I think if I were to do something like this again, I would want to use a non-superwash yarn. But all right, so Dean, I've got some questions for you. So, oh, you've got a little piece of yellow fuzz in your hair from your mom's bright sweater.
Ooh.
Okay, so you see your mother knit all the time, obviously. Do you have any interest in learning how to knit?
Honestly, not really. I think that I have my own sort of obsessions and things that I like to do.
And that is perfectly fine.
And I'm fine letting my mother be the master of her own domain.
Okay, so Dean, in the past, you have expressed interest in the fashion industry. Is that something you're still interested in being a part of one day?
Yeah, I'm still interested in that. I'm hoping to study international business and fashion, maybe even go into luxury brand management in college.
All right. So I have done my best to impart the full extent of my fashion knowledge to Dean, and that has been that I've told him about different types of sweater sleeve constructions. So, little quiz for you, Dean. What kind of sleeve construction is this? Is this one?
Is this from the saddle?
No, a saddle is when there's a strip right there.
Oh yeah, this is.
There's no strip. This is a drop shoulder.
A drop shoulder. See, I got it right.
And how about the other one?
Neither. I don't. You've never shown me this one before because there's no real seam.
That's just a round yoke.
So it's just a round yoke.
Yeah. So if
Icelandic?
Icelandic sweaters do have a round yoke, but they're a little bit more specific with the colorwork designs. If it had a really distinct kind of diagonal line from kind of the neck to the armpit, do you know what that would be called? Do you remember?
I don't remember.
A raglan.
A raglan.
I didn't tell him I was going to be quizzing him today.
Oh, so. Yeah, I didn't study.
Yeah, well, I don't know if clothing construction is considered a subset of fashion or not.
I think that's a part of the industry.
Okay, so I've tried as a mother to impart all of my my knowledge that he might want to know onto my son, but we'll have to do a review of that, it seems. Well, Dean, thanks for coming and being on my video and showing off some of the things that I have knit for you. I'm so glad that you like and appreciate the things that I make.
Definitely. I love all the things that you make for me.
Thanks, buddy. Well, thanks for being here with us. I will be back soon with another video where I will hopefully have some finished objects to show off, some newly finished objects to show off. I've got quite a few works in progress that are more than halfway done, so I think I'm going to have quite a number of things all getting finished at once. But thank you so much for being here with me today. Until next time, bye.